Okay, James.
Hey, hi everyone. I wanted to do a talk on the goddess Venus. This statue here, this statue is called the Birth of Venus. I wanted to first go into the myth behind the birth of Venus or the birth of Aphrodite. It's the same goddess essentially. But in the story of the birth of Venus, she essentially is the product of the god Uranus and the goddess Gaia. And the reason is because this happened way before the Olympians, essentially when Kronos, the god of time, was still in control of everything. Kronos, he's essentially he received the prophecy that his children would one day rise up against him and take over everything. And that's when he essentially started to go crazy and consume essentially his own children. But in one of the instances, he was also afraid of his own father giving birth to more offspring that might also challenge his rule. So his father, Uranus, the god of the sky, essentially would always lay with Gaia, the earth goddess, and produce offspring. So in order to prevent this, Kronos took his sickle and he castrated his father, Uranus, the sky god, preventing him from having more offspring. But when he castrated Uranus essentially was lusting after Gaia, but after he castrated him, his testicle fell into the ocean, and the lust that he had for Gaia and the combination of him and her inside of the ocean produced Venus. She's essentially supposed to be the perfect woman or the symbol of the perfect woman, perfect beauty. She rose out of the sea fully grown. When she rose out of the sea, all of the spirits around her, if you were to look at the painting of the Venus, of the goddess Venus, you can see all of the angels and spirits around her. All of them essentially helped her and pushed her to the shore after she was born. So Venus, her associations are not only with love, but they are also with the sky, the sea, the earth, and also the winds, because they essentially were the ones that pushed her to the shore. Venus is also heavily associated with sea foam, because it was said that she rose out of the sea foam. And anytime you're at like on the beach and you see like a bunch of foam on the beach, that's associated with the goddess Venus. Let me see. So I also wanted to talk about her statue placement, the altar that I have set up here. These things that I have on the altar are just things that I associate with the goddess Venus. Her colors are green, pink, red, but I painted the statue in that way because that's the way that I envisioned her. I thought about doing the seashell, a kind of like a light greenish color, but I preferred the pink color. But the tablecloth here that I have is green. Green essentially is like the main color of the planetary body of Venus. It's what people typically utilize to like radiate the energies of Venus. Venus as like a spirit, like she is like a woman, very sensual. So she likes very nice things on her altar, flowers, roses, incense, perfumes, that sort of thing. Offerings, I typically do like fragrances, incense for her. I'll do artwork. There's tons and tons of people throughout history who have attributed artwork to the goddess Venus as an offering. She is very much so like a muse kind of goddess who inspires, who creates, that sort of thing. The goddess Venus as well, I typically associate with her like, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought for a second. The kinds of herbs that I associate with her are Dittany of Crete, apple branches, rose root, myrrh, lady's mantle, and raspberry leaves. But Dittany of Crete, that herb specifically is the main herb that I utilize to represent the planet Venus. That's like one of her most magical herbs. In one of the myths associated with Venus, I think it was the witch Medea. She utilized Dittany of Crete that was blessed by the goddess Venus to heal Jason from one of his injuries while they were on their adventures together in one of the Iliad stories. Let me think. Typically, a good incense mixture that I do for her to represent like her presence and power would be a mixture of Dittany and Crete, myrrh, rose petal, and maybe like a little lady's mantle as well. It creates like the myrrh resin burns well on the coal, and it creates like a nice fragrance, a nice kind of energy for her. Her planetary days are Friday. Typically for Venus, she's called during Fridays on a morning. You typically call her for love, for friendship, relationships, anything that is like a matter of the heart. But Venus herself, she rules over all various assortment of things, because love has like various different connections throughout all sorts of different things, various topics. Venus essentially, she rules over anything that would have to do with beauty, passion, fertility of any kind. Because of her dominion over love, she would have dominion over nature, anything that would have to do with plants, spring, that sort of thing. In fact, a lot of the Greek goddesses have very similar associations with each other. A lot of them ruling over the same things. In fact, before Venus was really considered a love goddess, she was considered like a nature goddess of fertility. And she was later on associated with love later on in the Olympian Greek pantheons. Her personal powers, essentially, as I said, she controls love. She can bring people together. But one really serious aspect of her is that she also has a very strong dominion over chaos and any kind of chaos that love can create, essentially. In the myth, you kind of have to utilize a myth to kind of give you an idea of how she is. She has an affair with Ares. You know what I mean? And Ares is the god of war. So you kind of see their mix as a mix of love and war, with her having a sway over that kind of chaos, over bloodshed. Aphrodite as well is also very famous for hardening the hearts of men, for making them hate, for essentially taking away their love, keeping them from being able to find love, that sort of thing. So she has a very severe dark side. I have a few experiences with her over the years. She can be very, very like wild. She's very kind, very sweet, but she essentially she has just like a very passionate, wild side. She can cause lots and lots of chaos based upon your emotions and the situation. She's very similar to Lilith, but I would say she's more of a laid back energy if in comparison to a goddess like Lilith. She essentially has the ability to completely sway the hearts of men. In one of the myths, Aphrodite, she has like a magical belt that gives her the ability to essentially control anybody that looks at her. She essentially, they fall in love with her. They are mesmerized by her supreme beauty, and they essentially do anything that she says. That is a very famous power that she has, the power to sway the hearts of men. People go to her all the time. She's the most famous goddess to go to for love magic. Now, when I work with her, I sometimes will utilize different pentacles of Venus, the Solomon pentacles, to kind of interact with the planetary energies of Venus. I've only interacted with two of the pentacles. I've worked with the second pentacle of Venus. The second pentacle of Venus, essentially, that one is said to allow you to obtain honor, to attract wealth, to attract things that essentially belong to the energies of Venus. So anything that would have to do with friendship, community, connections with other people, but in like a loving kind of compassionate way. When I was using that pentacle, I essentially gained friends in very, very strange places, friends at very, very odd instances. The second pentacle of Venus is the one that looks like a star, that is like literally like a pentacle inside of a circle. The other one that I utilized was the third pentacle of Venus. The third pentacle of Venus, that one you utilize to specifically attract love, respect, admiration. But a lot of people utilize the third pentacle of Venus to attract their soulmate, or essentially to attract like a very serious romantic relationship. That one has worked like in various different instances. Those two ones are the main ones that I've used for Venus. In other instances that I've worked with her, I typically will work with her in like a conjure kind of capacity, to where I burn certain love candles to represent her, sending out energy in that kind of way. But other than that, that is like my experiences with Venus. Did anybody have any questions or anything that they wanted to add?
Isn't she married to Hephaestus?
Yeah, in the story, Zeus, so after Zeus won the Titanomachy, the Titanic Wars against the Titans, he essentially betrothed the goddess Venus to her son Hephaestus, the most ugliest god to the most beautiful god. Yeah.
But she had lots of affairs, didn't she?
Yeah, two very reputable ones that I know of. There's Ares, which is the most famous, and then there's the human Adonis, the most beautiful man. But her Aphrodite and Adonis and Persephone, they essentially were in a love triangle, and they were all fighting over each other. And Adonis essentially made like some type of deal to be with Persephone in the spring and like Aphrodite during the rest of the time. But Aphrodite, having like the power of her magical belt, essentially took over the mind of Adonis and made it so that he didn't want to see Persephone during the spring, and went to see Aphrodite during the entire year. And so Persephone, she went and told Ares about their affair, and Ares was jealous. And so he turned himself in, what's the animal of Ares?
Ram.
Yeah, a ram. He turned himself into a ram, and he went and killed Adonis, which then caused Adonis to fall into the realm of Persephone, meaning he's in the underworld forever. So she won. And it's like a constant play. Like every time Aphrodite comes up, if it's not talking about her birth, it's usually talking about something petty that may have happened. Another instance would be when Eris, like when Zeus and Hera were getting married. Zeus invited everybody except for Eris to the wedding. And so Eris sent an apple to the wedding labeled "to the fairest." And so the goddesses who have the title "the fairest," Aphrodite, Athena, Hera, all stood up to claim the apple. And that just like caused like a huge near war.
She reminds me of, just in my own experience, of Urzuli Frida a
Yeah.
lot, because they're such divas and they can be fickle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very, very fickle. There are several instances where she's both like blessing people with love, but also taking love away from people.
Yeah, I don't usually work with most of the Greek and Roman gods and goddesses. So my perception of her, I've never thought of her as a dark goddess, but it makes total sense.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, love can make you do the craziest shit. So
Yeah.
In fact, she's literally the reason why, according to the myth, like she's the reason why there's the Trojan War.
Wow. Okay.
It's because of their love of Helen of Troy and whatnot. She's like the cause of that. Yeah.
So any questions for James about Venus/Aphrodite, about practice with her, or anything else you want to ask? Richard said it's a beautiful figure. Totally agree. The statue is really beautiful, and then James painted it, and it's just amazing. If there's no questions, that's okay. Just want to make sure everybody gets a chance if they have any. So anything before I close out? You are welcome, Hearth. Hearth says thank you. Thank you, James. Awesome. I learned a lot. And it was really well done. Thank you. I also love when we use an altar because it does give a three-dimensional thing. So that's really cool. And Richard said it's wonderful. I would agree.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing. The insight looking at the different goddesses and the way that we perceive them and the way over a period of time, how that transforms and changes and still stays the same in a lot of regards too, and how it can be seen in both sides of the aspect of it being a light and dark goddess. And kind of looking past polarity and looking at what's probable with it too, and that's the interesting thing. Me and my wife were talking about some of the same things that you were talking about, and describing the stories and how this connects to our relationship with the spirit. That there's that dark, chaotic, lustful, passionate, embracing goddess that has a multitude of shades. And it's fascinating how all of these different gods and goddesses definitely convey these things. And I think it's absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, and I think of in Kabbalah, the idea of one, the two sides of the tree, mercy and severity with compassion in the middle. I also think about the tree of life and the tree of shadows, and how all deities really, you can put them on specific places on that tree, but they really can be anywhere in different aspects. I would have guessed that Venus could be, in her most supernal form, she could be at Tiferet. She definitely can be at Malkuth as the bride. Enlightened love at Tiferet. And then you can put her on the dark tree too, when she's chaotic and wrathful. And so I think there is what you're speaking of, Richard, makes me think of non-dual awareness, the idea that things can be all of these things at once, and it's not a paradox.
Right. Absolutely.
The Empress tarot card, isn't she? Or the Empress has the symbol of Venus.
Yeah, it does. She definitely could be.
Yeah.
And also Netzach, which is Venus, is green. And so
Right.
that ties in with her green symbolism as well.
I mean, Venus can be hard on people. Like
Oh, yeah.
in one myth, there's another one where I think she was jealous of this one girl. She was considered to be the most beautiful human on the world. And she was like a celebrity. Everybody was talking about her, how beautiful she was. And Aphrodite is just like, this girl is just taking over my place. And so Aphrodite cursed her and made it so that like no man would ever love her or marry her. And essentially she got to the point to where she had to go and visit Aphrodite on her island, and Aphrodite forced her to like perform several different labors before ever allowing her to like have love ever again. I don't know if I can't remember if she completed them, but I remember that like it was spiteful specifically because she gave her like tasks that she knew that she could never complete on her own.
She wanted to show this bitch who was boss, didn't she?
Yeah.
Well, and isn't that sort of how love works? I mean, I don't mean that negatively, but when we're not in line with it, it really makes us grovel. When we're in line, it's beautiful, but when we're not in line with it, and maybe we don't love where we love maybe someone that isn't good for us, or because you were talking about, we don't want to talk about clients, but a thing about somebody that was not working for them. And
I think I'll tell you about it. We've had so much success with Venus and doing love work for people, but I had a client and just a super person, but I did a spell on him and his partner, and the candle burned completely black. And I noticed it, and I sent him a message and I said, look at this candle. This is a lot of resistance. And the next thing he told me was the woman had a dream, and it was so absolutely terrifying that she broke off all connection altogether. And the candle burning solid black, it was just a very obvious no.
not, and it might not be that the people are bad, but they're just not
a
good
love
together.
match. Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, she's definitely can say no, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's pretty much no. Any other questions, comments?
No, I'm just glad to be sharing space with you guys again, and it's really awesome to hear what's going on, and this is great.
Cool. And so Richard, I believe you're doing the next meeting in May. I've got my months right. And not to put you on the spot, but did you want to say anything about what you're thinking of doing?
Sure. So part of my first journey into working with magic was the construction of tools, and it was part of doing magic, but also being the magic. So we utilize tools as a gateway or an opportunity to channel our own energies and influence energetic, spiritual, emotional, and even psychological energies inside and outside of our bodies. So that was one of the first things that I started exploring as a rite of communication with the spiritual world as a key to unlocking the door. So I focused on ritual construction, ritual tools as part of the network of communicating all of these different channels. So I thought it'd be kind of interesting to start sharing how we utilize tools, how we build them, and then how they interrelate to our own personal workings. Because, you know, and the when I started working with you guys, you know, I went through the training with you all, and I went through all the steps of the different spheres, and, you know, got to re-explore, and I even did some, you know, reconstruction rituals and like doing things that, you know, kind of reassessing, but also reapplying, you know, new and old ideas. And I thought it'd be kind of cool to start exploring that with the group and kind of resurface some of the stuff that we did from the 10 spheres and even into the higher learnings of, you know, the organization and what we have with the Circle of the Dark Mother. I think it'd be cool to start talking about it and see what happens.
Excellent, excellent. That sounds awesome. Yeah, tools, you know, and people do them differently, and sometimes it's a quest to find them or make them, which is amazing if you have the talent to make. I think that's awesome. So that's great. And what Richard's talking about, the 10 spheres, is it's about Kabbalah, but it's on our website. It's a training. It's actually broken into 8 spheres in that, even though there's 10 in Kabbalah usually. But it's just sort of a way to get you thinking about Kabbalah without having to dive into the deep end of Kabbalah as a starting point. But it's a really good place to get your feet wet into the ideas before you have to jump into a whole bunch of Hebrew and other stuff. I'll post the link to our page in the chat or our website. So it's circulus-matrum, which of course in Latin is circle of the mother. It's really Circle of the Dark Mother, but I didn't want to make the URL so long that it was crazy. But there's a link there. There's studies and there's other information if you're interested. If not, that's okay too. But that's what Richard's referring to, is the study of the spheres from that. Great intro. I know you already knew some Kabbalah, Richard, but it is still good as a refresher and to get you sort of going. So if anybody's interested, check it out.
Yeah, I think it's an excellent, not just a beginner, but even for advanced people to assess practically how you can use the spheres, because, you know, a lot of times you learn these correspondences or you learn diagrams, but how do you actually apply them? How is it functional? How is it useful in your magic?
Right.
And that program, I mean, to be honest with you, I really support it because I think it's great. I've worked through it, and I've been part of the group for well over a year, you know, so it definitely makes you reassess how you're practicing, because it's left open for you to plug in your own form of spirituality, like the way that you connect, that even then it still gives you an opportunity to explore without having the hangups, if you would, you know. So that's what I like about it, how I viewed it. But I think it's really cool, and you know, I love being part of this group, and no matter how far or how close, it's definitely interesting, and I'm glad that I get to be with you all.
Thank you, Richard. Yeah, and just to one of the things he said too, in the spheres, we use the Greco-Roman deities instead of something that's Jewish or Christian. And the reason we do that, because a lot of people know something about the Greco-Roman, you know, they've read something about them. But you can apply any deities, any path to it. But we use that to take away the stigma of those who have maybe been hurt by the church or you know, Christianity, and give you the idea of a way to plug in how you work. And as a preview, my next book, if it ever gets edited, which hopefully soon, it uses the spheres of Kabbalah and uses aspects of Lilith. So you can also take one deity and break them out into all the spheres. And it doesn't have to be just Lilith. She's who I work with. But you can pick any deity or any set of deities and find the correspondences. So very, very cool. If you want to subscribe to our newsletter, you can do that. There's a contact page on our website. And if you just want to email me, you can either use the contact page or you can just, my email link is there if you have any questions or anything. I usually get back to people fairly quickly. The last, I don't know, couple of months have been a little bit hard with some life things. So I'm a little slower right now than normal, but I will get back to you. It just may not be as fast as I would like. Okay, well, anything else anybody wants to ask or say before we close? Again, next month will be the first Sunday of May, 6:30 p.m. Eastern time, and Richard will be presenting.
So what we'll be focusing on primarily with the ritual tool building, the first implement that I'm gonna address is the wand, and we'll kind of explore what that is and how we utilize it, and kind of figure out as a group how, you know, each person that's in the group, if they want to share, it's up to them. If they don't, that's fine too. But I'll give a lot of areas to explore and look into. So I look forward to reaching out to you all then.
Great, thank you. And yeah, as Richard said, even though we tend to use Kabbalah quite a bit, you don't have to use Kabbalah or any of the paradigms we use. We believe there's many paths, many ways to do things. So whenever we discuss something, we bring some ideas, and you can bring yours too, and it's totally open, and no one's going to say, no, that's not the right way to do it. So, okay, well, thank you all. I'm going to close off the session. Thank you very much. I'll respond to you, Richard, tomorrow, and we can chat, but I'll send you a message tomorrow. Thank you all. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your time and energy, and hopefully this was fun for you. And thank you, James. It was awesome.
Thank you, James.
You're welcome.
Thank you, James.
Okay, Dad, first I'm going to stop the recording.